Ziad, thank you so much for joining on this series. Really appreciate your time. It's going to be a
No, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
good deal. Let's start here. Why don't you give an introduction of yourself and what it is that you do professionally?
Yeah, so I'm Ziad Ahmed. I'm 21 years old. I'm from the greatest town on earth, in my opinion, Princeton, New Jersey, where I am right now. I'm trying to stay safe and socially distanced and healthy and all of that good stuff, and hoping everyone listening is too. I am a student, and in my spare time, where I work full time, I run a startup called JUV Consulting. I'm the CEO and co-founder, and we're a Generation Z consulting firm that basically helps clients better resonate with young people by actually talking to real young people like myself and the amazing young people that I work with. And I started a nonprofit when I was in high school, at the end of middle school, basically. That's all around social justice and acceptance and equality. And sort of through that, realized how often people are talking about young people but not talking to us, which was the inspiration to start my company and try to do a lot of work in progressive advocacy and, in Gen Z marketing and storytelling and in just general trying to use my voice wherever I can be helpful and to try to learn what I can from wonderful, amazing folks around me. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, I mean, to expand on that a little bit more for our listeners that aren't familiar with your work prior to this, you started Juve when you were, what, 17 years old?
Yeah, I was 17 years old. I was a junior in high school. So it was 4 years ago now. I feel very, very old. I'm 21 now. And started as a junior in high school, came up with the idea as I was, I started Redefy, this nonprofit right earlier, and was being invited to White House roundtables and industry conversations and realizing that there's so many conversations about young people, but so few with us.
Mm-hmm.
And it really didn't make sense to me that there were youth experts consulting on our narratives. And it's like we exist in a three-dimensional world and can advocate for our damn selves. And so my junior year of high school came up with this idea that, we should be talking for ourselves and people should be compensating us for that. And got together with two friends and started it my junior year and had no idea what the hell I was doing. And it's been quite the whirlwind since then.
And can you give examples of some of the brands and organizations that you've worked with through your company?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've worked with well over 20 Fortune 500 companies, everyone from, Verizon to Unilever, to Viacom, et cetera, and also startups and also, nonprofits, all sorts of clients. We really believe anyone can benefit from talking to diverse young people substantively and as partners, and have had a really extraordinary journey working with a diverse array of clients across all industries and sectors to really try to create some positive change in the world and to really center the narratives of diverse young people.
Gen Z, to me, I've been fascinated by your generation for quite some time now. And just early on, just understanding the mindfulness that's inherently rooted in,
Yeah.
I think, the culture around Gen Z or the generation. How have you seen that come to light over the last 6 weeks?
So I think this is a really hard time to be alive, right? And I want to center this conversation, all conversations that I have in my privilege, right? Like I come from privilege and I am in a really privileged position now that I run a company that does pretty well, et cetera. And so I can't say that my experience or the experience of even my colleagues is indicative of a generation of 2 billion people. Generation Z is certainly not a monolith. And I'm certainly not the poster child for this generation, as I don't think there is any one poster child for this generation, but certainly it's not me, as I am a regular in all sorts of ways. We're a really diverse generation, and so I think there's been a lot of different reactions to the last 6 weeks, or last 2 months, or whatever it is at this point, that the whole world has sort of come to a standstill in dealing with this really scary, unfortunate, and overwhelming pandemic, right? And I think young people broadly are being defined by this moment in a way as like the social fabric that has defined our life. School is like now gone, right? And seeing our friends and I learn a lot in the classroom, sure, but I learn a lot more in the in-between moments in hallways and et cetera. And that's just not existent anymore. And so I think there's a lot of anxiety attached to this moment, compounded with the anxiety that young people already have around guns and climate change and all of these, ills of the world. And I think that a lot of young people today are reacting differently depending on their circumstance. Like, I don't have to worry right now about where my next meal is coming from. I don't have to worry right now about, if I can afford medicine for my grandparents or my parents. But the unemployment rates and the economic impact and the health impact that this is having on so many families and people is all encompassing, right? And overwhelming and sobering and saddening. And as a company, we're trying to do what we can to play our part, giving out grants to young people who, are uniquely disrupted by this moment. And JUV Gives distributed $26,000 cumulatively over the last month to 69 different young people who are struggling right now because their lives have been disrupted. And in reading those applications, it's just so apparent to me that young people are hurting right now, and people are hurting right now, but we're fighting, and we're counting our blessings because we all have something to be grateful for. And, I read these stories of these people who are in such harrowing circumstances. And I cried numerous times reading these stories, right? And their message is like, it's like, do you have anything else you want to add to the application? And, they're like, if there's someone else who needs it more than me, I hope you give it to them. This idea, and I think this answers your question, of the mindfulness that I am so privileged that so many folks who aren't, right, are still thinking about those who are less, are still thinking about this interconnectedness, are still thinking about how do we empower each other. And I think that really says everything about our generation, that there's this sense of, even when I'm down, I want to pull the next person behind me up. And I think that's really what a lot of us are leaning into right now, that everyone's impacted by this moment and we want to help each other out, but none of us are our best selves right now. And I think that we're struggling in that space because we want to be better friends and we want to be more productive and et cetera. And we've been taught to constantly plan for the next step as a generation. Now the staircase is suddenly gone, and I think we're not really sure where to put our footing in a lot of places. We're trying to be mindful and remember that, like, it's okay to not be our best self right now, like no one is, but as long as we're leaning into our heart and trying, maybe it's the best that we can do. And so I see a lot of that, of just compassion, of being there for each other, of trying to be understanding. And I hope that we come out of this moment, more empathetic, more connected, and that we just lean into healing. But I also think there is an ugly side to this as well, of like leaning into selfishness and, into, pulling away from groups, pulling away from community, because maybe you realize that you don't need it. But I realized that I need it more than ever before, and I think a lot of people have. And so I really, last night I dreamt about just the idea of going to a restaurant, and I think mindfulness is hard right now. I feel like I don't even feel human some days, but I think we're trying.
Your work. I'm gonna start again. Your work with JUV is largely around consulting brands on tone and communication. And as you elaborated on, there's a lot of sensitivities that come with selling a service or a product in this environment.
Yeah.
When I originally started seeing all of the kind of flash sell mentality that came in from, say, March 16th to 31st, it was very off-putting for me.
Yeah.
Right away, because there's a lot of folks that didn't understand the economics, the financial impact that this is all going to have. And yeah. I think for a large part, we're not even here on, hopefully I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem like we're even close to even really accelerating on what that's going to feel like.
Yeah.
So how are you talking to clients in terms of taking advantage of this opportunity, not from a selfish perspective, but from an altruistic perspective, or just a way to connect with people and maybe lend some help?
Yeah. So I certainly would never frame this as an opportunity. For anyone or for any client or for any person, what I would say is that, and what I tell my clients is that I'm not interested in anything, and I'm typically not. What I'm interested in doing is doing the right thing and doing work that we're excited by and doing work that feels meaningful and purposeful. This is a moment where every brand has a mission statement. This is a moment where you respond by making true on that promise, by delivering on the promise of your mission statement, by saying, now is a moment where people need us and we uniquely have resources and platform and agency and access, so we have to share it. And what I'm interested in doing is, I don't want you to sell to GenZ right now. What I want you to do is tell stories to Gen Z right now, is to give us opportunities right now, is to give us resources right now, and that is exactly what this moment demands. Like, we're spending 27 hours a week on TikTok, whatever it is, like, we want good content. We want good stories. We want to feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves. We want to feel connected again. And so give us that and try to make the world better through it. Give a major give to a nonprofit. Give grants out to young people who need them. And we're doing that with a lot of our clients. And basically every one of our projects has shifted to explicitly social impact. In the last 2 months, as that's been my direction as CEO, is like, that's what I want all of our things to do. And also, I think that's what this moment demands. I mean, I think it is tone deaf and ugly and distasteful when brands are just like sell, sell, sell right now, as if, I mean, look, there are things that people need, and it's not that you shouldn't be selling. It's that that's not the tone we need to set right now. The tone is not buy, buy, buy. The tone is let's help each other. The tone is let's create community. The tone is we see you, we hear you. And I don't want the same commercial 100 times of, like, these are hard times, we're going to do what we've always done. First of all, that's not true. First of all, a lot of these companies are complicit and actively contributed to the demise of the environment, to the demise of our society as we know it, and have made this world worse. Like, no, X pharma company, you're not going to keep doing what you're doing, because your lobbying is why our healthcare system is a mess, and why so many people are suffering right now, because they don't have the health that they deserve, because they don't know how to navigate it. And so I'm not comfortable at all with just defaulting to the same tonality that companies have always done. This is a moment to revolutionize the way that we think, to revolutionize the way that we feel, and to take risks, because this is uncharted territory. There's no game plan to follow. Mm-hmm. And what a risk should look like right now is putting all your eggs in the basket of purpose over profit, and putting all your eggs in the basket of being there for those who need us most. Because if you go down fighting for what's right, you go down with your pride, and you go down with your soul. And I think that is what we need to lean into right now, that people really need help, and we got to offer that.
In a election year, how does this global pandemic, and an election year for the US, I should clarify that.
Yeah.
How does this global pandemic kind of affect or motivate or demotivate your generation or your peers?
So, I mean, look, I don't want to pretend like I'm a public health expert or anything of the like, and or nor do I have specific data on this, but my feeling and my perception as someone who spends a lot of time thinking about politics and marketing and Gen Z and the like, and digital trends, and anecdotal evidence as a real Gen Zer who, talks to hundreds of Gen Zers on a weekly basis or more or whatever, right? I'd like to say, and I would want to say to you right now, this pandemic has made us all realize what we should have already realized, that we are only as safe as the least safe person, that universal basic income, that universal health care, that universal welfare are necessary if we want a country that is safe for all, and that looks out for the most vulnerable. And I think this moment has made that abundantly clear, that those type of solutions are what this moment demands, right? It's quite literally what's in the relief packages. But people have always needed relief. And I think there is a lot of that, right? And certainly a lot of people have turned left since this, or turned right in other ways. If they're like, I'm really mad I missed prom, and really mad I missed graduation. And it's those, people who keep forcing us inside. They don't understand that this actually isn't that dangerous. And so I think in some ways this is polarizing people, in making things feel more obvious, whether or not I agree with that obviousness. But on the other, and so I think there has been some positivity to that, of like people really, for the first time in many cases, understanding just how acute suffering is and what kind of relief people need, and now leaning more into those policy solutions. That said, broadly speaking, I just see a lot more apathy. We used to be posting all the time about it also doesn't help that this coincided with the end of the primary process. right? Like we were all talking, especially in my circles, like most of my friends are liberal, right? And like, et cetera. Like there's a lot of discourse between the different camps of um, the candidates in the primary. And now we're like in this weird place where it's like, we don't technically have a nominee, but we have a de facto nominee. And it's like, a lot of people don't want to support that nominee. And so people are just generally quiet about the election for the most part, I would say. Because one, it's not the priority. Like, am I safe today? The food on the table today, you know, like, is my sleep schedule at all healthy right now? My eyes are tired because I've been looking at my screen so long. It's just like the world that we live in, like just being on like these walls, being my whole world. Politics seems really, really far away, I think, to a lot of people, but also really close to others because like they need relief in this government check right now. And so I think there's been a lot more focus on like that house and like these bills, and there is on many ways the election, and that kind of makes sense. Because like what can like Biden can't do, or Biden or Sanders can't really do much right now, but the Congress can. And so I think the focus has sort of shifted, and I hope that there is new energy that gets re-energized in the summer leading up to November. Because my God, do we need to vote? Do we need to vote? But right now it feels like this is not our priority, at least from my perspective.
I know, and that's what I'm in fear of, is that the reality is that this is not top of mind, where of course going into March it was all encompassing, right? Everywhere you looked was
there were debates, and there were announcements, and there were and now it's all gone.
If you were the Democratic nominee at this point and you don't have any rallies and opportunities to drum up that kind of attention in the traditional sense, what would you do? How would you connect with Gen Z at this point?
Again, I would give a nominee the same advice that I give to a company. This moment right now does not exist for you to gain more support. This moment right now it mandates that you step up as a leader and show the country and show the world that you're capable of this job that you're going for. So this moment is not about rallies and people celebrating you. This moment is about you celebrating your constituents. This moment right now is about you turning around and using every ounce of agency and access and platform and privilege that you have to invest in those who need us most right now, right? To fundraise, to create digital infrastructure and digital resources, to share the stories of those who need sharing, need amplifying. I think Bernie did a really good job of this. If he used his entire, while he was still even running, he stopped fundraising for his campaign and just fundraised for relief efforts, right? Like, this is not about your campaign. This is about the crisis. And if you're running to be president of the United States of America, if nothing else, the job is, how do you handle crisis? So show us how you handle crisis, because we're living through one, right? And it's not about getting support, whether you win or lose support. Do what you think is right, and let us be the judge of that. And I think we're not seeing enough of leadership right now.
Your company recently organized a campaign for JanSport.
Yeah.
And it was, well, I'll let you explain it through, but I want to understand how that transpired, how it ideated, and what was the overall effect on the brand.
Yeah, so JanSport's a client we've been working with for a while on a retainer basis, and sort of like really the day before, basically everything sort of seemingly combusted, if you will. I had lunch with the team from JanSport in early March, and they were asking, how are young people reacting to COVID? How are young people feeling? How can we support young people? And basically through that conversation, it became apparent that young people really needed more support and new campaigns that really responded to this moment with compassion. And so we went over from the conversation and came up with some ideas, and basically in 10 days turned around the hashtag Unpack That Challenge, which is, a challenge on primarily TikTok, where we partnered with 10 of the biggest influencers of the platform, and had them set up their new work home station, as we're now at home now, unpacking their JanSport backpack. And for every video made, the idea was that a video, a backpack full of necessities be given to World Central Kitchen, regardless of the number of videos made. Though 12,500 videos were given. 12,500 backpacks full of necessities were given to World Central Kitchen.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it was a massive give, and it was really remarkable. Seeing the response on TikTok. These 12-year-old girls creating video. I don't know how old they actually are. They look 12 years old, right? Like creating videos in response to the influencers being like, "You have to make this challenge. Like we need to give necessities to those in need," and people making JanSport Stan accounts because they were like, "This is what we've been waiting for, like a way to use this platform they're spending all day on to actually help people, to spread awareness to those who like need things right now." And so it was responded really, really well. The campaign has over 17 million views cumulatively on TikTok right now. It got press coverage from People Magazine, Business Insider, etc. The 12,500 backpacks full of necessities were given to World Central Kitchen. We got to pay and compensate these 10 really diverse, amazing creators who are young and who are looking for opportunities like this. And for many of them, it was the first time they've ever done influencer marketing. Which is a really exciting thing, and we found the influencers that, aren't the ones that the brands typically use because we're Gen Z. So we know the ones that are actually popular, not the ones that like the brands know are popular. And so it was this really phenomenal roster of talent, this phenomenal community that like the team that made this product happen is like the very best that we have to offer and is wonderful and purpose oriented. And it was just this massive, really like it was such a joy for us to do, like partnering with the music labels, like and Grayson Chance's song was the soundtrack, and Grayson made a video of it, and coming up with the concept and making it sensitive and compassionate and thoughtful and not like selly but like real, like we're all setting up our new workstation and making it empowering but also like somber, because this is and like thinking about all these things and understanding the platform, and we as Gen Zers really understand the intersection of this moment really interestingly. Like we know TikTok, we know the trends, we know the sounds, we know impact, we know social justice, we know music, and then bringing all those things together to like make magic happen, like through influencer marketing and through creative was like, and like we all made videos ourselves and created this really beautiful deck. We sent to all the influencers of like exactly how to do it, and it was like really fun, but also I think like for us to do as like labor, but really the type of things people need to be doing right now. The campaign wasn't at all about selling backpacks, right? It was about JanSport saying and the hashtag was like hashtag JanSport has your back. Like JanSport saying like, this isn't about like, I don't need you to buy my backpack now. There's like, know that there's a brand right now that cares about you and that sees what you're going through. Like before anyone else was even talking about like COVID-19 response, it's like we started working on this like on March 11th, right? March 12th, right? Like that sees what you're going through, and we want to respond to it with compassion. And giving. And I think that was a really beautiful moment. And more and more the work that we're doing today.
Are there any other campaigns that you can point to that you've found outstanding throughout these last 8 weeks or so, whether it's a client of JUV's or just generally kind of across the ecosystem?
You're really putting me on the spot here, but I mean, certainly some like come to mind. But I think like House Party has made such an enormous comeback in the last. And like I never had House Party when I was younger, but all my friends did because I was like I'm too busy. But like now I live on House Party, and like they've invested clearly like a truckload of money into influencer marketing, into celebrity and partnerships within the house this past weekend, and that wasn't necessarily purpose driven, but it was giving young people content during a time when we're on the app and we want content and want conversation. And it certainly stood out to me. I think Chipotle, with their partnerships and giving out free Chipotle and et cetera, that has stood out to me as well. P&G with the distance dance and partnering with Charlie and et cetera. I mean, there's been a lot of campaigns and a lot of interesting partnerships, like the Axe and Teen Vogue prom, et cetera. Try to give young people and fill in the gaps of what we would have experienced normally, which I think have been cool, and also definitely a lot of gives in terms of grants or support or rewards and things like that. So there's been a lot of positive movement, I think, in helping frontline workers and investing in, using your facilities to make masks and et cetera. Like so many brands are like lowering fees or canceling fees or whatever it is. A lot of brands have been stepping up, like almost all of them, I think, but I think there's more that almost everyone can do.
Do you think consumer behavior is going to shift in terms of consuming media and participating in terms of you know, platforms like House Party? Like, how do you see that shift in connection?
I don't like I like keep struggling with this idea that like when and if we have a vaccine and when and if things are safe, inshallah, God willing, right? Like, will we just go back to normal, or have we equilibrated to a new normal where like we prefer this and it's easier? Like now it's like it's effort to schedule a FaceTime, you know? And like when my friends like, can we FaceTime tonight? I'm like, oh, I don't know. But it's like I'm at home all day. Like I really the answer is yes, but it's like I'm tired, you know? And I used to like hang out like in 6 different settings in one day and do 10 meetings on top of that in person. And it's like, I don't know. Cause like I definitely prefer in-person contact, but everything feels more laborious in this new world, like a FaceTime, going somewhere, etc. So maybe House Party is the new normal, and maybe this was just a trend to help us get through this moment. You know, I don't really know, but I certainly think this has normalized that digital communication works, but it's maybe not a replacement. Like we can be productive and work from home, but the moment when you pass each other at the microwave still matters, you know? And so this isn't a replacement, but it's still productive. And so I think some people will say, I choose productivity, and some people will say, I choose the way things make me feel. And so I don't think it'll be a one-size-fits-all response by any means, but there's been a tremendous learning and shifting. And I think community is important. I think there's no substitute for in-person community, but I think digital community works and matters and is still beautiful.
Ziad, what types of folks are you looking to connect with today, and what is the best way to follow you and your work over at JUV?
Yeah. I mean, look, the thing I miss most, right, in this whole thing, and look, I am in no way a victim of this situation, nor should anyone feel sorry for me in any way, but what I miss most is just getting to meet wonderful people. You know, I miss going to conferences and speaking and the conversations that I get to have afterwards, like where I met you, right? And like, I miss the in between moments of passing my friends on cross campus, you know, and getting a meal with someone impromptu. And I miss those moments so deeply. And so I'm just interested right now in getting to connect with wonderful people because I miss meeting new people. And I think one of the saddest moments for me about this moment is like, it's really hard for new relationships to start.
Yep.
Right? Like, how does one date? You know, and how does one, you know, and how
Think
does
about that a lot. I wonder how people are dating.
yeah, and how does one make new friends? And how does one, and like, I'm lucky in that I have wonderful friends and etc. But like a lot of people are in moments of transition. Like you just got out of a relationship, you just like got out of a friend group or whatever, and it's like now you're just like alone, and like there's no real way to like make new relationships. And so I'm just interested in connecting with anyone, honestly, like especially those who are interested in talking about Gen Z or talking about marketing or storytelling or purpose. Like that's like my sweet spot. I'm like what I could talk for days and days and days about. And I'm especially interested in talking to folks who are really interested in like how do we reach people better, how do we reach young people better and more authentically and more purposefully, especially through marketing and comms and insights and etc. But I just want to meet cool people who are excited, you know, and energetic and enthusiastic and empathetic and to make new friends because I miss making new friends. So that's what I want to do a little bit more of.
Amazing. And what's
and how to connect with me? And how to connect with me?
Yes.
Connect with me. I am at Ziad Ahmed on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Ziad Ahmed, just my name, first name, last. JUV Consulting is at JUV Consulting on Twitter and TikTok, and at JUV.consulting on Instagram. Trying to get that changed, so don't worry. And JUVconsulting.com, and you can reach us at info@JUVconsulting.com or me, Ziad, at JUVconsulting.com. And would love to be in touch with whomever.
Amazing. And I look forward to whenever the TED Talk happens for you. So
I've given some TEDx talks, but never a TED Talk. But hopefully
TED Talk. I want to see you on that damn stage.
Yes. Hopefully one day, but if not, just excited to have some conversations over Zoom with some folks.
Cheers. Thank you so much, Ziad. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thank you for making the time, and thank you for having me. I'm a big fan of your work, obviously, and always, and so glad you connected with Griffin and we're able to make this happen and think about how we can partner to make some magic happen going forward. But love the work that you do and really thrilled to be here.
Cheers, brother.
All right. Bye, my friend. Thank you so much for having me.